Today, Tori and I are talking about nutrition and eczema. What you should eat, what maybe you shouldn't eat if you have eczema, what might be causing a little bit of inflammation. And we're going to talk about liver supportive foods. And, we're going to answer all of your questions today. So hopefully you can join in on this conversation. It's so important because nutrition is something we're actually putting in our mouths 3 to 5 times a day. And so this is a very big possibility for something that could be triggering your eczema. And you should really know, what foods are good for you. And that could really be different for every person in terms of what could be very nutritious and sometimes what could be a little poisonous for you, something maybe you shouldn't be eating because you might be having sensitivities or allergies to that food, or maybe there's something going on in your system, like you have a pathogen or a gut dysbiosis, and maybe some foods might not be contributing to that right now, or maybe contributing to that. So, Tori, thank you so much for joining me in this conversation today.
Yeah, excited to be here.
All right. So, on our agenda, we are going to talk about what poor nutrition is, food sensitivities and allergies, nutrient deficiencies, toxins in your food, and what you can do. And then we're going to have Q&A time. So, definitely join us in on this conversation. This will also be recorded if you cannot stay for the entire live today. Okay. So, Tori, tell us, what is poor nutrition? What do we mean when we say poor nutrition?
Yeah, poor nutrition. So, food sometimes gets a bad rap. We hear words like good and bad, this food is bad and this food is good. And we don't really like putting moral value to food, but we do want you to think about it in terms of how much nutrient density are you able to get from what you're eating. And so a poor nutritious diet would be a diet lacking in vitamins, minerals, healthy fats, antioxidants, proteins, things that your body needs to make tissue, to heal, and to function optimally. So there's lots of foods out there that are not actually doing those things, that aren't contributing to your health and not giving you the things that your body needs. And so those are the things we don't want you having a lot of that could contribute to poor nutrition.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we really, really need good nutrients in order for our skin to heal. And so, one of the first things is your diet lacking in that nutrition?
Mhm.
And so that's something we'll talk about. There are some key nutrients for eczema people that might be lacking that we'll talk about. But then the other thing to think about is not just, are you lacking nutrients, but are you consuming things that you are sensitive or allergic to? So, can you tell me what the difference is between sensitivities and allergies, Tori?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something to note too that with food sensitivities and food allergies, sometimes it can be foods that are otherwise really healthy foods. So that's something to note, that just because you feel like you might be eating a really clean or healthy diet, it doesn't mean you don't have sensitivities or allergies happening. And so food sensitivity and an allergy are different. They're different responses in the body. An allergy is something that happens more acutely. It's a part of the immune system that creates a pretty quick reaction. You get hives or itchiness, scratchy throat. Other allergy symptoms could be like a runny nose, sometimes even headaches, or an upset stomach, things like that, but pretty quickly. Where a food sensitivity is a different part of the immune system that has more of a delayed reaction. And so the thing that gets tricky about those sensitivities is they can take up to 72 hours to actually produce a reaction. So it gets really tricky when you're trying to figure out what's causing my contributing to my eczema, when you're not thinking about what you ate on Friday when it's Monday afternoon and you're having some itchiness or more of a flare up. And that's something that is hard to differentiate, and we can test for those things, but it's important to know that there's a difference for sure.
Yeah, so when you go see your allergist to get an allergy test, it can be different from looking at sensitivities. And Tori's right, those reactions could be delayed. So you could eat something today and you won't have a reaction until Monday. And so it
Mhm.
can be really hard to distinguish what you might be sensitive to. And now these aren't necessarily things that you should take out for the rest of your life, but they might be foods you want to take out just while we're trying to heal you, while we're trying trying to take the overall inflammation load down. So that's why it could be also really important to work with a practitioner, because you might get these results, from something online, and then you might now say, oh my gosh, I have to take all these foods out. And you now feel like you're having such a restrictive diet. And that's not really our goal. Our goal is not to restrict you for the rest of your life. Our goal is to say, okay, right now, let's lower these inflammatory foods that are inflammatory for you, so that we can actually help your gut to heal. All right. And so moving on to nutrient deficiencies, there are a couple of nutrients that we do find are low in eczema patients. So, Tori, can you tell us a little bit about these nutrient deficiencies?
Yeah, so vitamin D can really commonly be low with eczema. It's something that just in our modern world, we're not getting outside enough, we're not getting in the sun, and that's the main source of vitamin D is actually through the sun itself. So getting outside when you can, getting that direct sunlight is really key, but there's a direct correlation to people with eczema having really low levels of vitamin D, and that can absolutely contribute. Vitamin A is actually also really common. You can see skin conditions when you have a deficiency of vitamin A. So even people have called it like chicken skin, keratosis pilaris on the back of the arms, things like that can sometimes be related to a vitamin A deficiency. And that's one that we can test for, but we can also make sure you're eating a lot of really nutritious vitamin A rich foods, things like the oranges out there, like the pumpkins and squashes have a lot of vitamin A. And zinc is actually part of skin healing, wound healing, so that you can see how that can contribute to skin conditions in general, not just eczema, but even other skin conditions, acne, things like that, and how quickly your body can even heal from those things if you have not enough zinc. And we get a lot of zinc from protein-rich foods, so that's something to keep in mind. And then omega-3 fatty acids, this is pretty chronic, I think, in our modern world, is just the balance of the kinds of fats that we're getting is really skewed. So we tend to get a lot more omega-6 fats than we do omega-3s, and those omega-3s are really anti-inflammatory. So they bring inflammation down in the system, and that directly correlates to eczema as well. So when we have a lot of inflammation going on, we're going to have more issues with the skin. And then probiotics. So we've talked about this numerous times on other calls and in different blogs. Our microbiome is so key in so many different health conditions. And really the skin is sort of like a mirror to what's going on in the gut. So if that gut has dysbiosis, which is just like an imbalance in that bacteria, if there's pathogens in there, if we're missing some of that good bacteria, kind of like missing generals in your army, then we really need to replenish that and work on the gut. So probiotics are really key in making sure that you have the right kinds of bacteria in your microbiome.
And what kind of foods can we eat to increase our omega-3 levels?
Omega-3s, fatty fish is a great one if you are okay with seafood. Things like salmon is really good. You can also do like chia seeds, flax seeds, any of those healthy fats. If you tolerate nuts, those have a lot of omega-3s. That can be a great source too. So that looks different a little bit for everyone with different sensitivities and allergens, but there's certainly a lot to choose from in that regard.
And what about probiotics? How do we increase those in our diet?
In our diet, so you can get fermented foods, things like sauerkraut. You can actually even ferment it yourself. Those are great. Kimchi is another one. So probiotic rich foods are a great way to get natural probiotics. You can also supplement probiotics. And then there's actually foods that feed certain strands of bacteria. So we can actually test the microbiome through your stool test and see kind of where you are with different levels of bacteria. And then if you're depleted in certain types, we can actually suggest certain foods that feed that particular type. So that can be really helpful in testing to kind of know what does your microbiome look like. For example, there's a bacteria called Akkermansia. We see that depleted a lot in different people. And if that's depleted, we can have you eat more apples. Things like that will feed that bacteria. So we can get really specific with testing to know kind of what will make your microbiome thrive best.
Yeah, and so when we're first working with patients, we are assessing, the possibility of food sensitivities, food allergies, of nutrient deficiencies. And we actually call this our core support. If we, you know, avoid those things that are causing inflammation that we're putting into our mouths 3 to 5 times a day. And if we replenish the nutrients with really good, beautiful colors in our food, with a lot of nutrients in our food, and we really think about this, we start to see people getting better. And this, we don't always need to, treat a pathogen or treat a parasite or treat a heavy metal. I know we've talked a lot about other root causes of eczema, and those could be a possibility. But we always want to start with nutrition, because this is what you're putting in your mouth 3 to 5 times a day. So you could either be choosing to put something that's working for you to help you heal, or something that might not be working for you. And the thing is that could be different for every person. So that's something we really need to evaluate. All right, Tori, what are some toxins that we find in food? And we have a picture here that's showing some of these
Yeah.
toxins. So tell us about the toxins we find in food.
Unfortunately, there is so many, and they're hard to avoid unless you're eating just really organic, clean food. So that organic meaning, we're watching the pesticides. So pesticides is one, herbicides, things like Roundup, which is glyphosate. There can be food dyes, so many food dyes, especially in the United States, that are used, and those are chemicals and they are toxic. We have sugar of all different kinds, high fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners, things like aspartame and like that diet soda that's probably in that picture there. So there's all kinds of things. There can be heavy metals in foods. There can be mycotoxins, which are from mold in different foods. So there's a lot of different exposures that are possible when you are eating. And so being really cognizant of trying to, eat foods that come from the earth as much as you can, and eating foods that aren't packaged with a bunch of ingredients that you can't pronounce. That's a great place to start as far as reducing those toxins. Plastics is another one. So, watching the ingredient list for sure is important.
Yeah. So, it's definitely, I think we need to think about both sides of the coin. We need to think about what's giving us nutrition, and then some things that are actually poisoning us, things like pesticides in our food, things like MSG in our food, food coloring. So basically what you see depicted here are the things that we know are not good for us. But we sometimes don't always put that together, that actually could be the cause of our eczema. And when we clean things up, if we change this picture here to one that is full of vibrant, beautiful colors, you are starting to get those nutrients into your diet, that are actually going to be like medicine, and that are going to heal you and your skin. Okay. So, what can you do? Tori, tell us about the clean food plate. Tell us what this plate looks like.
Yeah, the clean food plate. So one half of the plate, we really want to be those colorful, mainly veggies. You can do some fruits too, but mainly vegetables of all different colors. Shopping the perimeter of the grocery store and just trying something new, maybe something that you don't typically eat, but trying to look for the most vibrant colors. And then we have a little sliver for healthy fats that we want you to include. So that can be things like avocado, or nuts if you tolerate those well. Seeds can be part of that grouping. Protein is a pretty good chunk of this. We want good optimal protein. And I would say that a lot of people are under eating protein, and protein is really important because it's not just for your muscles, but it is actually a building block for all of your tissue, for all of your enzymes, for everything your body's working on. So we need all those amino acids that come from protein. And then we do want you to have some complex carbohydrates. So something starchy, it could be a starchy vegetable, it could be like a grain, clean grain, ideally gluten-free, and that can take up a small portion of your plate too. But the big thing to think about is that most part of that plate, the biggest portion of that plate, is that colorful vegetable section, and that's really important.
Yeah. So if you are looking down at your plate, most of the time for what we call a standard American diet or a SAD diet, a sad diet, we are not seeing this plate that we're looking at right here. We're mostly seeing like carbs filling the plate, right? So we have like a big plate of rice, or we have a sandwich with big pieces of bread, or we have a pizza. And the vegetables are typically like a little tiny piece of that plate. And what we want to do is flip this upside down. We really want the vegetables to be really plentiful. We want them to be rainbow colored. And of course, this can be hard to do if this isn't something you're doing, or it can be hard, especially if you're working with kids and your kids aren't used to eating this way. But that's why, at Cleanbody, we give you daily and weekly support to really support you with this and making these changes and really changing the nutrition. We don't like to really call it a diet at Cleanbody. We like to call it your nutrition plan, because this is what we're figuring out for you, is what is great for you to eat and what might be a little bit more inflammatory for you to eat or toxic. Okay. So we really like to test for food sensitivities and food allergies with some testing that we do through blood. We do like to test for toxic burden. So in the toxic burden test, we can check for things like pesticides that you might be getting exposure to, preservatives that might be in your food, and that can really help us out. And we like to really give you a customized clean food nutrition plan. So this is part of it, is making sure you're building these beautiful plates. But then what you're filling these plates with could still be different for every person. So even though things like tomatoes are really great and they have lycopene and really wonderful things, some people might not do well with tomatoes, because we might find out that you might be sensitive or allergic to tomatoes. So that's just an example. And when we find those food sensitivities and allergies, we like you to avoid those for sensitivities, anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months, while we are actually working on healing the gut lining, sealing up any leaky gut that might be going on. And once the gut is healed and the inflammation has really come down and the skin looks better, we do like to try to reintroduce these foods and see, how the body responds and whether we're able to bring those foods back. And usually we can. So we really like to, come to a place where you're having a really balanced diet, really balanced nutrition plan, where you're not needing to avoid everything on the menu. All right.
Yeah.
So eating whole, organic, and non GMO is really important. And really working with a practitioner can really be helpful, because it's, you can get really frustrated, and you might be thinking, oh, I need to eat this way. And it's like, I feel like I have to eat this way for the rest of my life. Or if I go outside of that, I start to have flares. And we really want to put, the restrictive diet in that certain time frame, only to heal you, not as your diet for the rest of your life, because it can actually be detrimental to follow a very restrictive diet. Tori, what can happen if if we're doing like a carnivorous diet where we're only
Yeah.
eating meat, or things like that, where we're really, avoiding things that are causing inflammation, but we might not be getting all the nutrients? Tell us what can happen. For example, like if someone's doing a carnivorous diet.
Yeah, I mean, you can get definitely deficiencies over time, right, of different nutrients that you're not getting if you are restricting a certain food group or type of food for a really long time. It can actually make you develop more sensitivities. So that's something to keep in mind. And then blood sugar issues are huge, especially things like with a carnivore diet or even keto long term. You can actually long term develop more issues with glucose. So if you're a person that has glucose issues, that's something to keep in mind, that those diets long term actually can end up being detrimental in that regard. So, the goal, like you just said, Dr. Fong, is not to be restricted forever, and that's what's going to make eczema better. It's really used therapeutically to bring down inflammation and then work on the root cause of what's actually happening in your system, because a healthy body and a healthy system has resilience and is able to handle exposures to toxins on occasion and able to get rid of those well and is able to, handle exposures to different types of food. And so if you're a person that's not handling that well, that you're getting sensitivities, that's just a clue that there's more going on kind of like under the hood that we need to explore and work on. But the ultimate goal is to get you back to a place where you are eating a diversity of food, because diversity is really the key to health, so that you're getting a lot of nutrients from a lot of different sources and not just a few food groups. So going into it, I think that's important, because yes, people get frustrated if they don't know that there's like a light at the end of the tunnel, that we're not going to ask you to like remove your favorite foods for the rest of your life. It's just a small portion of time, just like if you went and got a prescription for a medication that you take for a certain amount of time. It's the same idea. This nutrition plan is a prescription for a certain amount of time while we start working on what your body needs to heal.
Very well said. I love it. Now, the liver is very important in the skin process. And often when we have any type of any skin condition, really, especially eczema, there's often dysfunction in the liver. And there are two phases in the process of detoxification in your liver. There's a phase 1 process and a phase 2 process. And in order to accomplish these two phases, your body actually needs a ton of nutrients. And it might be a little small here, but in phase 1, you need things like B vitamins and folic acid and vitamin A and vitamin D and vitamin C and vitamin E, glutathione. And then in phase 2, you need amino acids and sulfur. And if we don't have these nutrients, it is going to be really hard for our liver to do the things that they need to do. So, Tori, where can we find a lot of these phase 1 and phase 2 nutrients?
Yeah, so anything, a lot of the colors we talked about, things like berries are really great. Those support both phase 1 and phase 2, but the amino acids is going to be proteins. Sulfur rich foods are going to be things like cruciferous veggies or onions and garlic that can support phase 2. And I would say that a lot of people, their phase 1 is working fairly well, and then phase 2 can be sluggish. And it's really about kind of balancing the speed of both of those. So if one's working really well and then the other one's not, then you have phase 1 actually makes external toxins more toxic momentarily before they're processed through phase 2. And so it's important to kind of regulate both of those. But phase 2 is one to really work on, I would say, and to make sure those amino acids are there. There's sulfur rich foods. So we're always talking about cruciferous veggies and making sure that you're eating these liver friendly foods, and that kind of fits where those are the most.
Yes. And so here are a list of some of those really great liver supportive foods, things that you could start eating today. And Tori, can you just give us some example of cruciferous veggies and
Yes.
quercetin rich foods?
Cruciferous veggies, things like, leafy greens, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, those types of veggies. Leafy greens, kale, bok choy, spinach. Berries, of course, everyone knows about. Turmeric is a spice, but the orange veggies are great for that too. Onions, garlics. Healthy fats we touched on. Avocado, seeds, nuts, flax, chia seeds, things like that. And then quercetin-rich foods. Apples are rich in quercetin, so that would be a great one to include. Citrus, but citrus, we have to be careful a little bit with that one, because eczema sometimes people have an issue with citrus. Parsley is another great source of quercetin. So lots of different foods, but you'll notice that colors and lots of veggies is all of these, most of these.
Yeah, so, it's almost like if you really just think about the clean food plate and you really just think about bringing colors into half of your plate and making that half look like a beautiful rainbow. And then you make sure you get your protein in there, you make sure you get your good fat, and then you make sure you have some complex carbohydrate. You're actually going to be getting all of these foods. So you don't necessarily have to kind of pick and choose. But if you start to think, when you're shopping, you first of all shop on the outer perimeter of that market. And then you kind of think, all right, I'm going to get all my colors. So what am I going to get that's red? And what am I going to get that's orange? And what am I going to get that's yellow? And if you cover all of those, you're pretty much going to be getting a lot of these phytonutrients we're talking about that are really liver supportive. But specifically, you can look out for these and get a lot of greens onto that plate as well too. All right. So Tori, tell us a little bit about phase one and what things can activate phase one, and what toxins are going to go through this phase.
Yeah, so anything that we come into contact with that's like an external toxin. So there's some listed here, like caffeine can be a toxin for the liver, alcohol, even smoked or charred food, plastics, anything that we come into contact with, our body, our liver processes those and makes them water soluble. So the job of phase one is to kind of take those and turn those toxins into a different form. And in that process, there's actually a lot of free radicals that are made that need to be neutralized. So it's almost making things like more toxic so that phase two can come and grab a hold of those things to get them out of the body. And so things that will kind of ignite a really strong phase one: asparagus, lemons, that's like that citrus that we talked about, B vitamins, zinc, magnesium, molybdenum, which is a mouthful for me apparently, and it's a trace mineral. That's when we get in trace minerals, but you can actually supplement trace minerals if you're using like reverse osmosis water, things like that. You can supplement that in. Lots of fruits and veggies, of course, and antioxidants. So that's all going to help with phase one. And then phase two, we'll talk about in just a second, but that one is, a big deal that if your toxins have become now water soluble, you really need to make sure they get out of the body and they're not just sitting there able to recirculate. So you need to make sure that both phases of the liver are working adequately and at the same speed. So phase two, we mentioned this a few times, is protein, amino acids, and I've got some listed here. It's probably really small to read, but glycine, glutamine, methionine, taurine, cysteine, those are all found in eggs, turkey, meat of different kinds, bone broth. If you are not, a meat eater or poultry eater, there's other ways to get amino acids too. Don't feel like that's the only place. There's lots of amino acids in different vegetable sources as well. And then we go right back to those cruciferous veggies to get the sulfur. Eggs, if you tolerate them, are a great source of choline, which is really great to get rid of those free radicals. B vitamins come up on both phases. Berries come up as an option for both phases as well. All those colors from berries, cherries, things like that are so full of antioxidants that they're just a great, really great food source, and they're delicious. So it's like a win-win. Berries, they're sweet, so they can kind of feel like a treat, but they're also just really great for you. And then turmeric, ginger, things that you can put, like a golden milk recipe, which has some anti-inflammatory properties. We add ginger and turmeric to like a non-dairy milk. You can put some cinnamon in there. So there's lots of ways to get these things in. But like you said, Dr. Fong, I think if you really just focus on what colors can I get on my plate that come from the earth, you really cover a lot of these. And then adding protein. So finding a protein source and then kind of filling that plate with veggies.
That's so great. Yeah. So I think the first thing to think about, let's try to not put many toxins through these pathways,
Yeah.
first of all.
Right.
So I think caffeine, and I think people don't necessarily think about it like a drug or a toxin, but I think that's one of the first things when we ask people, to avoid caffeine, they're like, "What? My coffee, I have to take it out of my system." And it's really important because not only does it become a toxin that your body has to detoxify, but it also acts like a drug, a hormonal drug for you. And so, that's number one. So we need to start thinking about what we're actually putting in our mouth that could be toxic. And then number two, we have to make sure we're eating a really nutritious diet so that we can actually help the liver to do all of these processes. So I know it's a lot of information on here. So if you guys actually want to read this, we did just release a blog that is actually detailing all of the liver supportive foods. So go ahead to the link in my bio and click blog, and then you could read that blog. Okay. All right. If you are looking, so first and foremost, we always want you to eat these foods. We want you to focus on nutrition, and we don't necessarily want you to be taking supplements if we can help it. I think supplements are great if you're not getting those nutrients in your diet. And if it is something that's harder for you, maybe you're allergic to something or you don't like the taste of fish, or you can't have nuts and seeds and things like that, then it's possible that supplementation might be important. I do think it's really important that you work with a practitioner to figure out your supplements, get some testing. And then once you get that testing, your practitioner can really customize the approach to your nutrition and your supplementation. But we do have a clean skin nutrition kit, which kind of just has some of the nutrients that we talked about today that could be low, things like omega-3s and vitamin D, and just an overall multivitamin supplement. If you guys are interested in that, you could click the link in my bio, actually go to free eczema tools, and then you'll see right there our supplement kits that are for skin. Okay. If you want to understand a little bit more about what the root causes might be for you and you have eczema, check out our eczema root cause quiz. The link is in my bio. And if you are interested in working one-on-one with our team, definitely think about booking a consultation. You will be meeting directly with me, and you can go use the code IGDC30 and get 30% off since you have been here at the live today. If you feel like you didn't get all of the information about what the root causes of your situation might be, what the testing might be, and you really don't have a good picture of what treatment might look like, then we do offer a money back guarantee on this visit. Also, we do offer ordering labs directly. So if you are interested in maybe looking into whether you have food sensitivities, whether you have leaky gut, we do have 2 tests, the Food Sensitivity Complete and the Gut Zoomer, that are actually available for direct order. And that does include a discovery consultation so that we can discuss, how we might move forward with care after you get those labs. Okay. All right, we would love to open it up to questions now. There are some questions that have been submitted, so I will go back and answer those. Today, we are talking about, is poor nutrition causing your eczema? So if you guys have any questions, please type them into the chat box now. And let me go back and answer some of the questions that were submitted. So how much is this program for a 3-year-old with eczema and food allergies? Okay, great. So we have so many different options in working together. My recommendation is to book a consultation so we can figure out how we would work together. We are a practice, so we do have a visit-to-visit approach where you can book individual visits with me and or a Cleanbody practitioner. And you can add on nutrition visits if you would like to do that. We have things like support memberships. I think this is so important for eczema people. We need to give you support, and we need to give you support that is, week by week, because as we all know with eczema, every day is different. From today, you could have a flare to tomorrow, it could be things are doing okay. So in our program, we have support memberships where we can actually check in on you every single week. You have the ability to message us all the time. And then we also have complete memberships, which actually put these 2 together, where you get a visit every month and then support on a weekly basis. So we have lots of different options. Our lowest option would be $267 for an individual visit. And then our programs really range. So definitely go to the links in my bio, check that out. And if you just go to book a consultation, I can also discuss those with you. Okay. Next question, how to get my 2.5-year-old to poop daily. Been working on gut healing, feeling stuck since her skin is better, but still have some skin issues along with food allergies. What could be missing? Tori, do you want to tackle this one first?
Yeah, I mean, constipation and eczema often go hand in hand, and maybe for this parent that's typing this, is that you may notice that his or her skin gets worse when there's more constipation and less bowel movements, and that's pretty common. So water first is like the easiest Make sure that this person is getting enough water every day. And even at 2, it should be at least half of their body weight in ounces. So if they weigh 30 pounds, at least 15 ounces a day. It can be more, especially if they're going outside and running around and playing, sweating, things like that. Making sure your child's eating all those fruits and veggies that we've been talking about, and they're getting all that good fiber. And then, further than that, we do things like stool testing to kind of see what's going on with the microbiome, or there's some healthy bacteria that's missing. What's going on with the liver? Is it making enough bile so that it can make poop the right way, and that the bowel movements are regular, because bile has a lot to do with that. So the liver is connected to the bowel movement. So there's a lot of areas to explore. There can be nutritional, deficiencies that can contribute to constipation. Healthy fats is another great one to make sure that you're having your child consume. That can help too. So I would start there. And then, if you're not having success with those kind of basic things, that's when I would start looking for guidance and working with, us or somebody like us that can help you figure out what's going on.
Yeah, and if you have been doing some work already, because you did mention been working on gut healing, what could be missing is we need some information, right? We need a good evaluation. Our team really likes to look at poop. We actually like you to take pictures of your poop, and we like to look at what it looks like, because that can actually give us a lot of clues whether dysbiosis is an issue, whether parasites are an issue, whether it's bile that's the issue, whether it's fiber that's the issue. And so that could really help us out. And then number 2, the testing that Tori just mentioned is really great. It can help us see the good bacteria, the bad bacteria, the pathogens, whether there's leaky gut, whether there's inflammation. And that could really give us the clues. Your question, what could be missing? We could answer that with testing. So you would either book a consultation with me so that we can talk about what we would do, and then we could figure out what's the best process for working together. You also can order the gut zoomer, first, and then we could have that discovery consultation if you just kind of want to get the testing first and then discuss afterwards. So those are all your options. Okay. All right, next, we drink water bottles because we don't know what else to drink or what filter to get. Can you recommend filters, please? Absolutely. So go to the link in my bio, click product recommendations, and there's a bunch of water filters there. I do recommend for drinking water reverse osmosis filter, and then remineralizing that water. So there's a lot of different options for that, and some of those are on our product recommendations. So you could check that out. Okay. I definitely do not recommend plastic water bottles, drinking out of them. We are exposed so much to microplastics already that we don't need to do more to do this. So it's hard to say what's better, tap water or drinking from a bottled water source. I would say even just getting a Brita filter would probably even be better, just because the water bottles, the problem with it is the water actually will travel in that bottle, and as it's traveling, it could be in a hot train or something like that, whatever it's being transported in, and it could be hot there, and as it's hot, the plastic is leaking into the water, and the heat is one of the worst things. So anything that is in a plastic container that gets hot, you're going to have leaching of those plastic toxins into the water or even the food source. So even if you had a plastic Brita filter, and I don't love that it's plastic, but even if you just had that and you kept that at room temp or in the fridge, at least that would be plastic that's not getting hot. And then you're still having it in plastic. So there may be some microplastics that are still in there, but it is actually going to be less than your plastic water bottle. Okay. So I think you just need to balance, even if it's a financial concern, if it's that you can't put something under your sink. I actually am testing out some reverse osmosis filters that are countertop for you guys. And I found one that I really like that I'm going to do a video about soon. So definitely check that out. Okay. All right, great. Let's see. And someone is saying gut health is very important. Absolutely. when we're talking about nutrition and gut health go hand in hand. So definitely, if you guys haven't seen our other lives, we did one on leaky gut, we did one on microbiome imbalance, and both of those are have to do with gut health. So definitely check those out if you haven't seen those already. All right. Well, Tori, thank you so much for joining me today in this conversation. And for you guys who don't know, Tori is a clean body practitioner and nutritionist. So when you work with our team, you actually can work with our entire team, with me and Tori, or you also can work with Tori alone. So we see a lot of people with eczema. That is one of the main conditions we treat. So if you are interested in meeting us and learning more about the root causes of your condition and how we might be able to help, definitely think about booking a consultation and use the code IGDC30 for 30% off. All right, we will see you next week, and I hope everyone has a great week.